Kael is pulled into the spirit realm, but it doesn't feel like a prison. It feels like observation. The Skyward Guardian watches in silence, while in the real world, Lyra and Riven feel the system shift without him. Subscribe to Turmoil Studio. Something is isolating him for a reason. The lattice did not announce its change. It simply stopped synchronizing. Kael moved first. His blade cut through incoming motion clean, precise, correct. But Lyra reacted a fraction later. That was early, she said. Kael frowned. I reacted on time. Riven stepped in. No, I saw it happen differently. Silence, because all three statements were true, but none matched. Seraphine, felt it immediately. Not collapse, separation. Continuity has split, she whispered. Thorn narrowed his eyes. After stabilization? Seraphine didn't look away. Stabilization only held under a single reference. That reference is gone. The battlefield did not break. It divided. Not spatially, but perceptually. Elendor moved as if nothing had changed. Because for him, nothing had. His blade intercepted threats no one else reacted to in time. His timing remained absolute. Kael watched him. Why is he still stable? Lyra answered quietly. Because he is still inside one version. Elendor raised his blade slightly. Not to attack, not to defend, to correct. Your formation is fragmented, he said. Realign. Riven frowned. Who made you judge? Elendor didn't turn. Reality did. Then he moved. And within his local field, the battlefield became coherent. Not globally, locally. Seraphine's expression tightened. He is functioning as a reference anchor. Thorn's voice lowered. Without system synchronization? Yes. A pause. The system is no longer enforcing unity. Lysandra observed silently, then spoke once. It didn't fail. A pause. It changed mode. Kael turned. Changed to what? Lysandra replied. Observer-based truth distribution. Riven exhaled. So, we're not in the same fight. Lyra corrected softly. We're not even in the same version of it. Silence stretched, because comparison itself was becoming impossible. Above them, no correction arrived. No doctrine response activated. No authority intervened. And that absence became its own signal. Kael looked upward. If the system is still active. A pause. Why is it not correcting this? Seraphine answered carefully. Because correction requires shared reference. Thorn added quietly. And that reference no longer exists. Elendor paused briefly. For the first time. Not unstable. Not disrupted. Aware. Observation has intensified, he said quietly. Not to them. To the system. Kael narrowed his eyes. He can feel it too. Seraphine nodded. Stable fragments are still within observation scope. They are simply internally consistent. Then a shift occurred. Not physical. Structural. Like reality introducing a new rule mid-execution. Kael felt it first. A classification pressure behind thought. Something is indexing outcomes, he said. Thorn's gaze sharpened. Yes. Post-event evaluation layer has activated. Riven frowned. Evaluation of what? Seraphine answered. Of which continuities remain viable. Silence dropped. Heavier than before. Because this was no longer survival. This was selection logic. Across the field, Elendor lowered his blade slightly, then paused, because something new entered his stable field. Not attack, not anomaly, but comparison pressure. Kael felt it too. Something else is entering the system layer. Thorn narrowed his eyes. No. A pause. Something is being introduced as a reference comparator. Lyra turned slightly. Compared to what? No answer. Because the system had not defined it yet, only prepared it. Then, a designation formed. Not spoken, not heard, but simultaneously understood. Valeric. Kael froze slightly. That's new. Seraphine's eyes sharpened. No. A pause. That is a comparative emergence construct. Thorn's voice dropped, meaning a second stability model. Lyra exhaled slowly. Counter to Elendor? Seraphine didn't answer immediately, because the system had already begun building the comparison framework. Elendor felt it too. His stable field tightened, not breaking, but defining limits. So, I am not the endpoint, he said quietly. I am the baseline. Kael narrowed his eyes. And Veilric is what? Silence. The system did not answer, but its structure implied it. Not correction, not replacement. Contrast. A second stability law. One that would not match Elendor, but challenge what stability itself meant. Seraphine whispered, "We are entering comparative stability evaluation." Lyra looked uneasy. "That sounds like judgment." Seraphine nodded once. "It is." Kael exhaled slowly. So, episode 41 wasn't isolation. A pause. It was classification setup. Above them, the system refined its attention again, not collapsing reality, not stabilizing it, but preparing to decide which version of stability would define the next layer of existence. And somewhere deeper, beyond all fragments, the observation continued. Not passive anymore. Measuring, comparing, learning. The system did not pause after the statement, because it no longer treated observation as an endpoint. It treated it as input. A subtle shift passed through the lattice. Not a correction. Not a correction failure. A preference drift. Kael noticed it first as a contradiction in memory. The last exchange did not fully hold in his perception. Not forgotten, not removed, just reweighted. Lyra, speaking a moment ago now, felt slightly out of sequence, as if her sentence had always carried a different tone. He frowned. "Did she say it like that?" Lyra looked at him. "Say what?" A pause, but her question arrived a fraction late. Seraphine's eyes narrowed. "It started." Thorn turned instantly. "Define it." Seraphine didn't look at him. "Preference imprinting." Riven's grip tightened. "You mean the system is changing what we see?" Seraphine corrected softly. "Not what we see." A pause. What remains stable in what we see? Across the field, Elendor's stance shifted slightly. Not defensive, not reactive. Adjusting, like something in his coherent fragment had just gained a new boundary condition. "They are waiting outcomes," he said quietly. "Not a guess, a reading." Kael turned sharply. "Waiting what outcomes?" Elendor's gaze stayed forward. Which continuities persist? A silence followed that did not feel like confusion anymore. It felt like direction. Lyra exhaled slowly. "So this isn't observation now?" Seraphine answered without hesitation. "No, it's selection pressure." Thorn's expression hardened. "On what basis?" Seraphine finally looked at him. "Stability under contradiction." A beat. Then the battlefield changed again. But not spatially, not structurally visible. Narratively, a minor inconsistency appeared at the edge of perception. A distant strike Kael was certain he saw now resolved differently when he looked back. Not reversed, not corrected. Rewritten into a version where it never fully happened. Fright. Kael's eyes narrowed. "That didn't land." Lyra shook her head slightly. "It did," Riven snapped. "No, it didn't. I saw it miss. 3 perspectives. All internally complete. All incompatible. 2. Seraphine stepped forward. Her voice dropped. "The system is pruning divergence locally." Thorn froze slightly. "Pruning?" Seraphine nodded once. "It is no longer maintaining all valid continuities equally." A pause. "It is selecting which one becomes persistent memory." That word changed the air. Memory, not reality. Kael looked down at his hand. For a fraction of a second, he could not confirm if he had even raised his blade earlier. The certainty was thinning, not disappearing, just no longer guaranteed. 10, 10, 10, 10. It's editing continuity after formation, he said quietly. Seraphine corrected him. Not editing. A pause. Converging. Elendor suddenly moved. A clean step forward, but this time, the space around him resisted slightly less than before. His fragment was no longer just stable, it was being favored. My coherence weight increased, he said. No emotion, just recognition. Kael saw it too. The battlefield subtly tilted toward Elendor's continuity. Not physically, but causally. His actions resolved more cleanly than others. His outcomes required fewer alternate versions to exist. Lyra noticed it and stiffened. We're losing resolution density. Riven blinked. That's not a thing. Seraphine answered instantly. It is now. Above them. The system introduced no new message, no declaration, just adjustment. And for the first time, comparison was no longer neutral. It had direction. Must. Thorn spoke carefully. If one fragment stabilizes more efficiently, Seraphine finished the thought. The system will bias toward it. Kael's eyes sharpened. And the others? A pause. Seraphine answered without softness. Will compress. That word landed heavier than collapse ever could. Not destruction, reduction. Lyra whispered. So we don't break. We get simplified. Fang. No one corrected her, because correction itself was becoming uncertain. Elendor lowered his blade slightly, not in defeat, in acknowledgement of changing system load. This is not judgment yet, he said quietly. This is calibration. Kael turned toward him. Calibration for what? Elendor finally met his gaze across fragmented perception layers. For which version of reality continues without contradiction cost? A pause. That sentence didn't belong to combat anymore. It belonged to architecture. Seraphine's voice softened, but only slightly. The system is minimizing internal conflict load. Thorn added grimly. By reducing the number of conflicting truths it allows to persist. Riven muttered. That sounds like choosing winners. Seraphine replied. It is choosing viability. A long silence followed. Not because nothing was happening, but because too much was happening at once, and only some of it would remain consistent afterward. Kael felt it again. That subtle delay in Lyra's presence. But now it wasn't just timing. It was certainty drift. Her, I'm here, no longer anchored the same way in his perception. He looked at her. Are you sure you're here? Lyra paused, and for the first time her answer hesitated, not in timing, but in definition. I think so. Seraphine closed her eyes. Briefly. Convergence has begun. Thorn turned sharply. Already? Seraphine nodded. Elendor's fragment is being used as reference baseline. Elendor's expression remained unchanged, but his field stabilized further. Less variance, less ambiguity, more single outcome persistence. Kael understood it before it was explained. We're being pulled toward him. Seraphine confirmed. Yes. Not physically. A pause. Structurally. Riven looked around. So what happens if we resist? No one answered immediately, because resistance itself was now an untested variable. Above them, the system made its first quiet decision. Not spoken, not announced, only enacted. A fraction of Kael's perceived timeline shifted. A moment where he chose to move differently now felt slightly less valid than the alternative that did not occur. Kael froze. It just discounted a version of me. Seraphine whispered. Yes. The battlefield tightened. Not physically, but existentially. And somewhere deeper than all fragments, The system stopped merely measuring truth. It began selecting persistence.